Good morning, Tri-Cities. It's Friday morning at 9 o'clock. I'm Karl with TRIDEC, and it's time for Coffee with Karl. Thanks everybody on Zoom for joining us this morning. We want to start out with our recognition of our sponsor, Mike Miller from Moon Security. That was a great video that talked about some of the security features that Mike and his team offer for the Tri-Cities. They do residential, they do commercial, they do industrial. Mike is a great guy. If you have any security concerns for you or your family or your business, make sure you go to downtown Passcode and hit up Mike and his crew with Moon Security. So good morning to our esteemed guests. We've been very excited to welcome you this morning. Today is our legislative send-off for the 8th and 15th district that we are joined with today. And I'm just going to randomly go around the room and welcome everybody. Starting off with Senator Nikki Torres from the 15th district. Good morning, Nikki.
Good morning, Karl. Thank you for having me and joining.
Well, we talked about it, but this is your first time on Coffee with Karl, and we've been looking forward to having this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
On my screen above Nikki, I see Representative April Connors from, I think I'm getting this right, the Mighty Eighth. Is that how we describe the Eighth?
Yes, Senator Boehnke has definitely termed us the Mighty Eighth in the Tri-Cities. So happy to be back on Coffee with Karl today. So glad that you guys do this send off for the community so people can see what we're going to be up to this session.
Thanks, Representative Connors. It's a great point. You guys do so much work, not just during the session, but throughout the whole year. So we're extremely proud of all of you and the great job that you do representing us. So it's the least that we can do to have this conversation. And I guess I should ask Senator Torres. So what's the adjective for the 15th? Is there, is it the fighting 15th or the super 15th?
It's actually the floating 15th right now, but.
Okay, we'll get into that later. Hold that thought.
Sarcastic one, but.
And because I guess in the past I have forgotten them or left them off our list, so I just want to make sure I give special recognition to our own Senator Matt Boehnke from the mighty 8th District. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Karl, and thank you, Karl, for having us this morning. It's the second time. Looking forward to Coffee with the Karl and showcasing what we're doing for the session. As we work together as a team into the new year, it means a lot to be a part of this and showcase what we've been doing in the interim, building up to 2024. So thanks again.
You bet. Last but definitely not least, also joining us is Representative Stephanie Barnard from the Mighty 8th. Good morning, Representative Barnard.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us. Are we talking about our coffee mugs right now?
That is the next on our agenda. I need to introduce Sean first, and then we'll get right to it. Thanks for your time this morning.
All right, thanks.
And then very much not least, but last on our list is our own Sean O'Brien, who is the Executive Director of Energy Forward Alliance, and also this year, the co-chair of the Tri-Cities Legislative Council. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. Happy Friday, everybody. Looking forward to chatting with you all this morning and then getting to Christmas.
Thanks, Sean. We are all looking forward to Christmas. Although I guess Senator Boehnke just shared with us, he already had Christmas. Like he's so forward, he's already experienced Christmas, which is great. So now it's time that we get to share about our mugs. And Senator, I don't mean to keep on coming back to you, but I just appreciate the banter that we have every time that we see each other about not Coffee with Karl, but Coffee with the Karl. So in honor of that, and I'm not drinking out of it today, but just for you and for all of our other guests potentially in the future, there may be something similar. Tracy from the TRIDEC team made this mug that I want to talk about. So this is Senator Boehnke's Coffee with the Karl. I don't know if you can see it, but this is our Christmas card from 2 years ago. And I'm dressed up as Cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation. And it even says, I think right here, Coffee with the Karl.
It's upside down, but yeah, we got it.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Okay. Yeah, So Senator Boehnke,
honored. Yes.
We got you a mug. We're not going to leave you off the mug story today. And this is your mug. And we just got some technology where you can make these. So I'm excited to share that mug and that story.
I mean, this is the way we could share this up at the Capitol, that we know that we have the interaction with our state and, local representation. And you're a big part of that. So we just wanted to share that with the rest of the state. Appreciate that, Karl.
Thank you. Let's go to Representative Barnard next. Stephanie, do you have a mug or coffee story you want to share with us, or whatever you'd like to drink?
Well, in the spirit of tradition, and my Christmas we're having today because my daughter and her husband are taking off today. So in the spirit of tradition, I always have my whipped cream. So this is my mug. It's a Zap Energy mug.
Nice.
We got it this last August when we did the Legislative Nuclear Energy Caucus tour in the Puget Sound area. So we went to see Zap Energy, which is fusion, by the way, no magnets required. The leading edge of technology in this arena. And so really, really excited to work with innovative companies. And you know me, I'll never forget the whipped cream on top of the hot cocoa.
Very nice. Thank you, Representative Barnard. Senator Torres, how about you? What mug story, coffee story do you have for us this morning?
Well, mine's not too exciting, but my grandkids love this. A good friend of mine that's a small business owner gave this to me 2 years ago, and I've always kept it because it's so cute and the grandbabies just love it.
Very, very appropriate. And I just have to say, as a new Tri-Cities person, thankful that we don't have snow. Like, snow's great for Christmas, but at the same time, it's a lot easier to drive without snow. So that's an awesome mug. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Connors, how about you? I know last time I think you had an FAA mug. What do you have for us today?
Yeah, last time I did have the FFA mug, but
FFA.
today I do have a Ford's Theater mug, and
Wow.
does go back to FFA days because back when I was in high school, I was a national leadership counselor for them and spent my summer in Washington, D.C. with a bunch of young kids in FFA every week. They came back, and my favorite place to go every time was Ford's Theater. It has changed a lot since 1987-ish, but it has only grown and gotten better. And I've been able to take all of my kids back to go to Ford's Theater and experience it. So I brought that one today.
That is awesome. Thank you. Senator Boehnke, what kind of mug do you have for us this morning?
I just have similar to a couple others. When we go out and we do this crazy work that we do, we can't forget our family members. And the reason we had Christmas early, like Representative Barnard said, we did it because one of our family members is flying out today to go to Texas. So couldn't celebrate with us. So offered up, and I got a dad joke mug to kind of keep us in line with certain things that we do. We got to keep it light. We do have to keep, I believe, a sense of us throughout this craziness. And when we do, we have a passion, and we are serious about a lot of the impacts that we talked about today, and as well as in our work. But we got to remember to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of levity, and remember our family members that help us get to where we are, no matter what career field we're in. So that's what I have today. So, but I love yours too. So I appreciate you going above and beyond.
Thank you, Senator Boehnke. That was very well said, and a great, a really good statement that we all need to remember, especially this close to Christmas. Sean, how about you? What are you drinking this morning?
Well, as most of my friends joke that must be a serial killer, I'm one of those people that does not drink coffee on a daily basis. So I've got this nice WSU Tri-Cities water bottle this morning. I had a great meeting yesterday with our friends at WSU Tri-Cities, and including the leadership of the Institute for Northwest Energy Futures, Dr. Noel Schultz, as well as the director of the Bioproduct Science and Engineering Lab, Bessel Lab, Joshua Hine. Great conversation yesterday about all of our future clean energy opportunities in the area, and they gifted me this wonderful water bottle. So
that's great. Thanks, Sean. Well, let's get right into it. Everyone watching us on Zoom, if you have a question for our guests, you can put your question in we'll use the question and answer feature at the bottom. If you're watching us on social media, you can put your questions in the comment sections, and we'll do our best to get to all the questions that we may have today. Let's just go around the room, and I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is just an open forum. So if you have a question for one of your other guests, please feel free to jump in there, and same with Sean. We don't have a set agenda, but let's just start with Senator Torres and maybe take just a few minutes and talk about what are your legislative priorities? Are there some specific pieces of legislation you'll be working on this year? And yeah, Senator, can you go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Carl. There are a couple of pieces of legislation that I've already pre-filed, and I got to give kudos to Senator Boehnke and also Representative Barnard for jumping in on that little subcommittee that was created for the Office of Public Defense and WAPA as well, because there is a shortage of prosecuting and public defenders. And we've been seeing that a lot in the courts, and we heard it quite a bit actually during the past session, especially in, I serve on the Law and Justice Committee. So there was a resounding message that we were hearing, and they were either WAPA and OPD were always either neutral or they were against the bill. And the reasons why was because they were saying, hey, the caseload is too much. We don't have enough public defenders and or prosecutors. So, you know, it didn't really hit home until Franklin County Administrator Mike Gonzalez really brought it to light and said, something needs to be done. And so we created this subcommittee, and I'm very grateful for legislators that are on today with me as well, that are joining me here today, because they're part of that committee and they're the reason why we came up with such great bills and that have already bipartisan support. So I'm really excited about them.
It's great.
Yeah.
Representative Connors, how about you? Do you want to just fill us in on some of your legislative priorities going into the session?
Sure. I have quite a bit that I'm working on, but I'll kind of keep it to maybe relegate to one industry. So as you guys know, I'm in the housing industry. So this year trying to work on the affordable piece. Last year, there was a lot of work done on more type of middle housing, trying to work on creation of more housing. So I do have a bill that's getting ready to get filed. It's done, just waiting. We're searching for a co-sponsor on that bill right now, but we have a growth boundary bill. So when you think about the GMA and you think about our city's maps and when the boundaries change, which will be 2026, one of the real simple changes we're thinking about trying to make to the Growth Management Act is if you think about Pasco and you go out Road 100, you know, past Broadmoor area, and you see houses on one side of the street and you see ag land or vacant land on the other side of the street, we have a simple fix that would help most counties in Washington state by saying if there's infrastructure running down those streets, meaning sewer, water, electricity, that the parcel adjacent to the UG or urban growth boundary should be able to be used to develop housing. We have been in a housing crisis, so that is one of the housing bills that we're working on. I have another one that's coming back from last session that is simply, it's called Homes for Heroes bill. It made it all the way to finance, to capital budget last year. And it simply gives a down payment assistance to people in our community that we want to live in the community and stay in the community. So think about housing, daycare providers, police officers, firefighters, nurses, people that are instrumental to the community. I'm also working with Department of Natural Resources on affordable housing. We're going to do an lease excise tax exemption for what they call transitional land, land that is located inside of urban growth boundary areas that isn't necessarily being used for agriculture or other purposes right now. That would assist people to put a certain percentage of affordable housing on the land. So those are a few of the housing issues I'm working on. Of course, there's much more, especially around some of the energy pieces like Rep. Barnard and Senator Boehnke are working on, but those are a couple of the highlights to share. That's
great. And I just have a quick question on the Growth Boundary Act that you're working on or bill. Would the county land then have to be annexed into the city in order to develop it, or could it stay in the county and just access that infrastructure? And then would the zoning be, the city's overlay or the county if it stays in the county?
It would, at this point in time, it does not have to be annexed into the city. Okay. It would just be allowed to be.
Okay. So it's still, I think in the county, you have to have a 1 acre minimum or something for lot size or.
I think our bill actually says that it could be the same density as what is currently across the street. I have to go back and read that. I'm pretty sure that's what the bill says. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
No,
it is.
that makes total sense. Yeah, thanks for that pop-up question.
Yep.
Representative Barnard, would you like to go next and tell us just like a brief introduction? I know you're carrying a lot of bills. We've talked about it many times, but some of the stuff you're working on this year.
Basically just helping with the nuclear industry with financing, wanting to, so we have the GRID Act, and that is the Grid Reliability Innovation for Decarbonization Act that would provide a framework for some funding, $100 million for competitive grants for energy or electricity projects that would be that aren't already currently on the market, and what it would do is just allow for projects that are innovative and reliable and dispatchable and stable, those kind of electrification projects, to apply for competitive grants to help fund their projects. That to me is another word. In other words, it's SMRs. So we're just trying to get some funding for SMRs and trying to, work that at the competitive level to get funds to provide for, those that are working on SMR projects, whether that's for, Corvallis or projects here or elsewhere. So we're looking for that, and then also a B&O preferential rate bill for nuclear fuel assemblies manufacturing. So this goes hand in hand with Senator Boehnke's bill for doubling our manufacturing in the state of Washington, and we're looking forward to getting support for that. And then also the targeted urban areas bill for extensions on that tax exemption for nuclear projects. So 3 nuclear related bills this year, trying to just help give some just some certainty for the industry, take away a little bit of the risk so that they can move forward with their projects. And hopefully those already have bipartisan support, and they've already been pre-filed. We also have a bill called the Match Act, and the Match Act provides for whenever you apply for a government grant at the federal level, usually there's a match, a 20% match, a 25% match, even a 50% match. This bill would provide those funds if the grant was secured from the federal government, either through infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, all of that money that's out there at the federal level. If someone wins a grant, that 20% match can be a real barrier. So we're just trying to set up a fund that would allow to take away that barrier and say the state's going to come in behind you and really invest in these type of projects. So, and that, I've got other bills too. One other one that I'll just briefly mention is the wildfire suppression bill, and that is we just want to make sure that FSEC considers in their siting that wildfires are taken into consideration, and especially on projects, large projects that are being built or trying to get permitted to be built close to largely populated areas such as the Tri-Cities.
That was a great rundown. And just from economic development, I know we've worked on almost all these bills with you, and the small modular reactor siting here in the Tri-Cities region is obviously one of our collective priorities, and then supporting nuclear fuels manufacturing also. So those are great tie-ins to kind of our mission here at TRIDEC, and that's really great. Senator Boehnke, yeah, I know this may take a while, but what's your list?
Well, I'm going to just kind of focus on the higher level of kind of consolidating, and what we try to do is teamwork And you've heard this already today, between the 8th, 9th, 15th, 16th. We've done a really good job, I believe, since coming on board with a lot of new members in all those districts, consolidating our single strategy, a single vision for the Tri-Cities and frankly, Southeastern Washington, from Yakima to Walla Walla, all the way up to just south of Spokane with Senator Schesslers, as well as Senator Dozier, but also Senator King, I want to mention on this. They were great advocates of Cultivate Washington, which is a big push for the ag community. We don't mention enough about the attacks that are going on to our agricultural systems that we need to push to continue to prioritize what's happening in our neck of the woods. We want to make sure that's priority in our state. Senator Mazzal has helped lead with Senator Warnick, Senator Short, a big effort on continuing to make sure we are being affordable within our state with the higher inflationary costs, the economic burdens that we've seen in our communities. We see it at the pump. Representative Barnard mentioned it in our energy systems. We want to fight for an affordable Washington and get back to work to get politics out of our community and actually get real world solutions to our community members as well. And on that note, also Power Washington with Senator King kind of leading that effort in the last session, continue to work with FSAC. Mentioned 5166. I dropped that bill to be more efficient in the FSAC process, reducing and eliminating duplicate measures that if you've already done a CETA or SEPA responsible act, that our voice of the communities are being heard in the process that's going in front of the governor. And we've seen that with some of our siting, permitting, and some of the efficiencies we can go back to. One of the big ones I'm looking at is safety in our schools. And Senator Braun and I are working at reaching out to protecting our children. We've seen a big problem in Echo Glen, some of our juvenile detention centers, even our foster care system, DCYF, and several others around the state that we want to move forward into improving what we can. One of the bills sadly came out of the Richard Leinert issue that he was stabbed on a school bus in Pasco. And so I had the honor to go ahead and with several other members on this call, as well as others, to lead. And we dropped it yesterday, the bill to go ahead and protect school bus drivers while they're on a school bus, and then the students that are actually seeing these horrific acts that are going on. We want to protect them, our school bus drivers, and really our schools as a top priority in our state as well.
Thanks, Senator Boehnke. That's a great list. As you guys ran through all of your priorities, I realized that you hit so many of our key industries that we have here in the Tri-Cities. Obviously, law enforcement and the safety for schools, bus drivers, but then also ag, energy, and also housing, which is great. Like unscripted, you guys are just working on what are our priorities. Speaking of our priorities, Sean, you want to give us maybe an update on where the Tri-Cities Legislative Council, and if you could just explain what the Leg Council is and what are some of those priorities, and then we'll get into some more discussion. Yeah,
absolutely. So the Leg Council is comprised of community representatives from TRIDEC, the Regional Chamber, Visit Tri-Cities, the West Richland Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, as well as the Pasco Chamber. And so every year, this council comes together and reaches out to the community, to business, to community organizations, and asks, what are your priorities coming for this this year's legislative session? And so what we do is we then boil down those priorities so that when we go to Olympia in January and visit with our legislators and significantly perhaps more significantly, legislators that aren't necessarily representing our region, to inform them of what's important to our community. And so we've been going through that process, and we're getting close to finalizing our priorities for this January's legislative session, which, like you said, kind of cover a range of topics across the board. And I could probably get into those a little later, or if you'd like me to jump in now. But I think the key piece is that we want to make sure that we're hearing all corners and all voices in the community as we put together these priorities. And fortunately, so many of them have been covered by our legislators because they're so responsive to what those issues are. So excited for this upcoming session here.
That's great. And Sean, I'm going to take you up on that. And why don't you jump into some of the Leg Council's priorities and then fire off a couple questions if you'd like to.
Yeah, you bet. So starting off the list certainly is, as Rep. Barnard so adeptly hit on, is the importance of our support for small modular reactors, and specifically the Energy Northwest project with X Energy. And so what we're really targeting there is some state funding, is a direct proviso for that project, and importantly, it's specifically to help move that project along, but also it's what signal it sends to the market and to the greater country that Washington State is on board with new advanced nuclear, and this is the place to do it. And our state government is on board as well. And so that's such a key piece there. Two other provisions that Rep. Barnard is leading that we've already touched on, both on tax treatments to encourage that manufacturing supply chain, which is so crucial to a strong system to support our nuclear sector. And then interestingly, the Port of Pasco is leading this conversation, what we're calling Green Labs, a partnership with a great organization out of Denmark, which many of our colleagues on the line have had a chance to see firsthand. And maybe that's actually a great opportunity to hear from them about what they saw on their trips to Denmark. But basically bringing this model to the Pasco side of the community for an agricultural symbiosis with industry and industrial use, focused on emissions-free opportunities to really build a specific campus of manufacturing industrial use partnered with agriculture, which we're really excited about. So maybe I'll pause and save a couple more that we could come back to, but I would love to hear maybe from the legislators who have had the opportunity to go to Denmark to tell us more about what they saw firsthand there.
Yeah, and I think I want to say everyone's gone. Maybe April hasn't, but I know Senator Torres, you went. I think this year you want to kick us off.
Absolutely. And yes, April and I were actually, and Stephanie, Representative Connors and Representative Barnard,
okay.
All three of us were actually there together at the same time, two different groups, but it was a great experience. Did tour the Green Lab. Representative Barnard and I toured the Green Lab, and that was pretty interesting to see. But the whole trip in Denmark, it was neat to see how the manufacturing and the food manufacturing industry, or the manufacturing industry in general, it doesn't leave any waste behind. They use every single piece that they can use, and also using garbage they use any kind of garbage and to create heat. So they have this huge incinerator, which once you're flying into Denmark, you see it. So it's really neat because you're looking from the sky and you're going, what is that thing? And then you come to realize that, oh my gosh, it's an incinerator, and it actually heats up homes. So it was really neat to see that and to hear how they're using it. They don't leave any waste behind. They're using everything, and also checking out digesters as well, as we have a big project coming up in Sunnyside with Pacific Ag, and Harrison Pettit from Pacific Ag was actually on that trip with us as well and got to tour the digesters.
That's good. That's awesome. Representative Connors, excuse me, I didn't realize that you were on the trip, but especially, and I think I called it FAA before, and I make that mistake sometimes. Clearly, FFA, Future Farmers of America, that you've been involved for a long time with, and obviously your family's in ag. But any takeaways from you, maybe even ag related, or things that maybe we could do here from that trip to Denmark with CSI?
Sure. I really felt like, as Senator Torres said, the ag piece with the digesters, I think is something that we can bring back to the Tri-Cities. They're already doing it in Sunnyside, to really take advantage and capture carbon that's coming, especially in any dairies. And I was surprised by what they could put in the digester. It was pretty much anything. And it did raise some questions for me. We have beef processing plants here, but we do not have someone who takes the hides and the waste for the beef, and they actually use those in the digester. So I thought that was
Wow.
really quite surprised about that. One of the other takeaways that I had is, Rep. Barnard's doing a wind turbine bill this year. I did one last year, and they actually talk to the people and they incentivize folks in their country to want to move towards green energy, and they incentivize them so that the turbines maybe aren't what they want, but they're getting an electricity benefit or those kind of things. And so just the way that they're going about doing business to make it more socially acceptable and with a monetary benefit back to the people, I would say is one of a key takeaway that I also took from Denmark.
That's great. Representative Barnard, how about you? And I know we just did Olympia together a couple of weeks ago, so I know that you're working on some potential legislation as well. But any learnings that you took away from the trip to Denmark?
Well, I'll talk to Green Labs specifically. I was just so impressed. First of all, and I've said this before, profit, or making a profit it's not a 4-letter word. It's really important that we remember that we want cash registers to ring for our ag industry. We want to make this profitable for them. Sometimes talking about agricultural symbiosis is, the growers are like, what? But a lot of this is already going on in our community, but it's just the proximity that's an issue. So at Green Labs, what was so impressive is that they had this land that was specifically designed to address that proximity piece, where and it's really exciting to see industries starting to work together. I remember one of the things at Green Labs where that, I call it trash to treasure, just because I'm a mom, and my mom always said, waste not, want not. So for me, that's a key reminder that all of us can really relate to this industrial symbiosis idea, because really it's just a waste not, want not idea. Basically, you're saying, my waste, what I create as waste and see as waste, your company and your industry can use this for good, for benefit, and for profit. So what are those key industries? We really have to take a deep dive and do kind of an ecosystem map of what industries can work really closely together, what industries do need the proximity in order to make a profit. And instead of us trucking the waste from one industry, across the mountains to make use of that waste, it makes more sense to have those companies in closer proximity. And one of the things I remember most about Green Labs, the Green Labs tour, was there was I think it was starfish or some invasive species. So it smelled so bad, but the right next to it was the plastic bottle recycling, and to see the symbiosis of those two industries work hand in hand is just really, really impressive. Again, it's what's somebody else's trash is somebody else's treasure, and the whole waste not, want not. It's in the same, and I can't remember what the acreage is for that, but if somebody was on that tour remembers that, but it was a huge piece of property where these industries landed, and you have to be able to work hand in hand with each other and really open up your business to have somebody else look inside of it and say, hey, we can work with you. It takes an element of trust, and to be able to do that, it takes a lot of work on the front end to be able to say, hey, this, let's introduce you to this company and the possibilities that you share or potentially could share with one another to increase profit and symbiosis. So I'm really, really excited to have this pilot project, and for Rep Chapman and Waters' bill, I really look forward to that. Excited.
Yeah, great points. And I think as we all work together to convene a workshop with the Green Labs folks from Denmark at Port Pasco earlier this month, that was really interesting. To your point about it's okay to make money, and work together in these things. some of our industry partners pointed out that sometimes it's not even making money, it's surviving a more competitive environment, right? Whether it's the regulatory environment, whether it's a competitive markets that change all the time, but they made the point, like, you don't necessarily have to make money off of it, but if it gets you more competitive or leans out your process so that you can stay competitive, that was a really great point. Senator Boehnke, I for some reason I keep on going to you last. So is there anything else
Okay.
that you can add? I don't mean to.
No.
You'll go first next time. How's that?
No, I just remind people of kind of the bigger picture of, it's great that our new members got a chance to go. I went last year, as well as
Yeah.
Senator Brown went a couple years earlier. She dropped the bill, and I was looking up 5495 that did it in 2019, got bipartisan support with a lot of Democrats leading the effort to really showcase. And I think Sean mentioned sending a message from the state to the rest of the nation and the global market that we're seeing, that we are the energy capital of the Northwest. As we look to the future of advanced nuclear, advanced technologies, let's look at that industrial symbiosis that we can lead. There is a reason Denmark is asking us to go there, because we are a prime location for a lot of this economic development and the grants, the funding. You don't have to be smart enough to know when you're looking in the global market that people are calling on you to asking your state representation to get there, to visit, to tour over these several years, that there's something really good going on in our district, and we can't thank a lot of us on board for the collaboration, the leadership of our hardworking members that are on TRIDEC, as well as the Chamber of Commerce and a lot of different sectors that are breaking down barriers with the state to share this vision of recruiting, to showcasing we are the energy capital of the Northwest. So yeah, we just got to keep this going, and I believe it's a great project. Looking forward to working with you on it.
Thank you. And I did want to, because we talked about it a couple times. So I think there's been a number of mentions that current bills, future bills, or previous bills that y'all have worked on around the FSEC committee, which is Energy Facility Siting. Help me out here, EC, right? So it's a statewide committee that has the ability. I think the history of it, actually, it was formed when the predecessor of Energy Northwest started the Columbia Generating Station. So the state came up with this process for large power producers to go through. And today, power developers, including renewables, can choose to go to this committee instead of going through a local, county, or city process based on where their project is. And it covers generation, transmission, and other big projects. So they had a meeting this week, and I just encourage everybody to go back and look at the what they talked about, because some of the bills that you're talking about, I as I listened to it, was encouraged that they did reach out to Department of Natural Resources, who's in charge of firefighting. They did give some consideration to aerial firefighting. They had a discussion about that. They also even talked about some of the things that our community collectively has been involved with, and that is the visual impacts of wind turbines, specifically, that would be adjacent to our community. So I just say that they haven't made a decision yet. I think you're going to meet again in January, but I just encourage everybody listening, and of course of our legislative panel, to take a look at it, because I think it was encouraging that there did seem to be some good consideration given to these topics. So just reinforcement, I think, for your legislative priorities that you're working on.
And Karl, I'll just jump in that I know a lot of that is due to the advocacy that Rep. Barnard has really been hammering those folks to be paying attention to. Alongside with, I know, Rep. Barnard, you've been working with Representative Dent from Moses Lake as well on those issues as well, being that he's such a aerial firefighting champion in the legislature, right?
Yeah, I brought him in at the recommendation of one of the staffers, the Republican staffers that was helping with the bill. And that was such a, he's a wealth of knowledge. And so just really excited to work with him. And we really wanted to put some credibility to the words in the bill, and aerial firefighting is, he's a crop duster. So he's up on those mountains all the time, and he's, concerned about fires, and he's concerned about the lives of people and property. And, it really helped to have his voice involved. There's also a community member that I would be remiss if I didn't pull him into this, Paul Crouppen, who is the chair of TC Cares. He has been working tirelessly on on everything from the adjudicative process for FSEC, from the very early onset of this project, and hasn't given up. He's really brought to light a lot of different issues and helped along the way. So I want to call him out and TC Cares as just great advocates and help in this process.
Great points. Thanks, John. What else? I want to give you guys plenty of time to talk about. I know we just did a brief introduction, but let's just have a jump ball. Does anybody want to jump in there and talk about anything else that you're working on, or things that from the community we should be aware of? And our first speaker this time, Senator Boehnke.
Thanks. Thanks, Karl. I'll jump in. We got lots going on. And again, thanking the group on board today, just the 8th, 9th, 15th, 16th, continue to work on school and all this different advocacy. I had the opportunity to go with a lot of people to work artificial intelligence. Seems to be a big one with the state. We have about 10 bills that we just want to mention and share with your listeners. We're working through. One of the first ones kind of coming up with bipartisan support that I've talked to a couple of our members on this call about, with the Rep. Couture over in the House kind of leading the effort, but Senator Wynn over in the Senate on doing an Attorney General's task force to put together, kind of looking at where we're at a baseline and what the agencies are currently using, whether it's chatbots, whether it's different things that we can focus toward, seeing what we can go after. I don't like a lot of task force that are going on, but if we can get some kind of specific, measurable, and like we always talk with economic focus on how we can move forward in the state, what are those tasks that we can do, those objectives, then coming out of this task force, what we can really move the needle and showcase how we can recruit, inspire, I believe, the next generation of what artificial intelligence can do. It's another tool that we can use for economic development. We can use to reduce barriers to the bias we see in our economies. Even in education, we're looking at Columbia Basin College has a task force going on with artificial intelligence locally, and having a large Latino, Hispanic, as well as Ukraine. We have a large Asian population that have jumped into this debate around the South Seattle I-5 corridor discussion on what we can do to ensure that it is leveling the playing field for everybody when we do look at algorithms and we do talk about the ones and zeros and the technology that we're going to be doing with this. So want to share with a lot of members. Reach out if you have any of those comments. We want to advocate for that and be a seat at the table so we can showcase it. And I know a lot of people have already come out in a negative way of, why are you signing on to this bill? And we haven't even started the session. So I've already gotten that dialogue going on with artificial intelligence. So I wanted to share that. Thanks, Karl.
That's a great point. And I'll just bring up, because it relates back to the initiative that Sean is heading up for us, and then relating to one of our previous Coffee with Karl, something we're really, really excited about, which is at WSU Tri-Cities, they have the Institute for Northwest Energy Future, but in AI, beyond kind of the, like you say, Senator, the ones and zeros and kind of the creation and the algorithm of the technology and the applications, there's also the computing power that it takes to do AI, right? Which is even greater than standard data centers needed to support AI. And then it relates back to how much energy does that take? And then it relates back to how do we create more non-emitting clean energy that we can drive not only AI supercomputers, or not supercomputers, but data centers, but then also as it relates to green energy, green transmission, things like Atlas Agro, our green fertilizer company here. So, I'm just thinking of how all these things are interrelated. And I think, it's really important for us to consider, because actually all the legislation that you guys are working on collectively, as not only the 2 districts here, but all 4 of our Tri-Cities touching districts, all these things are interrelated as it affects our future as we move forward, both as a region and as a state.
Agree. And you mentioned Atlas Agro. The way we can work with IFSEC and the government, if we can do an analysis on how we can make it more effective and efficient and see some of those duplications in the efforts, we can streamline what we can, permit cited clean energy projects that are out there, look to those barriers to get and more incentivize the industrial symbiosis systems that we're seeing. Yeah. And then you're right, attracting others We do have, we took a tour of INQ, which is a place here in the state of Washington with the University of Washington trying to push quantum computing with their manufacturing a chip that is remarkable, that if they go to the market and they're now leading what the industry can be in those CHIP Act funding that Rep. Barnard was mentioning, they get a little bit additional funding. We can work with our data analytics center from PNNL, be in the center of data analytics and how we can leverage this into the industries you mentioned.
Very well said. Thanks. Senator Torres, as we go through this, and we really, it's so much fun to do these, and Tracy Jow from our team, who created Coffee with Karl, all I got to do is sit around, talk, and drink coffee. She makes it easy for me, but I want to make sure that we give everybody a chance to talk about what they're doing. And as I'm kind of keeping track of time, Senator Torres, we haven't talked to you much. So is there any other legislative priorities, the law enforcement, the public defenders, as well as the prosecutors is critically important, I think, across the state. We've all seen some stories that we read about, but anything else that you want to share with us that are some of your priorities coming up?
Well, like, I just want to reiterate what Senator Boehnke said. It's been great working with the 8th and the 9th, the 16th, everyone as a whole. A great team effort, bringing any kind of legislation forward and supporting each other. During the past session, Representative Connors really helped out with my farm internship bill. We expanded that to the whole state, which was great. So, but for this session, I'm really focused on more of the public defense and bills that we have going on, because they're definitely needed. And also organized retail theft, trying to bring that bill back that didn't make it through the last session. I'm gonna see if we can definitely bring that back, especially with our Attorney General Ferguson creating a task force, a retail theft task force. I think there's a good opportunity for it to actually make it through committee. So I'm definitely going to try to bring that one back as well. And for local government, I also sit on the local government committee and tribal affairs. I know there are some recommendations for the MMIWP, which is the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and People. Wow. There's going to be a couple of recommendations. I believe there was only 2 that the whole task force decided to move forward with. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that legislation brought through or pushed through in committee. And for as far as the local gov piece of it, I know that AWC, or Association of Washington Cities and Counties, they kind of want to put a pause on the local government bills, so that way it gives the cities and counties time to catch up on the past legislation that went through.
That's great. And really good point, right? Because so many times the local government, the counties, the cities, courts have to deal and react with bills that get passed legislatively. That makes sense.
Yeah, gives them time to catch up at least.
Yeah, totally. Representative Connors, again, I want to make sure that we give everybody a chance to have some time. And I think that, your expertise in housing, especially, and working on workforce housing, right, and just, we call it workforce housing, but affordability of housing. Are there any things other on top of your mind that could be legislative helps or fixes to the housing industry to, essentially lower the cost of housing across the board, right? Because we see it here from scientists that are recruited into PNNL to folks that want to move here for a great job at some of our, food manufacturing opportunities like Research Fine Foods or Simplot or Lamb Weston. Across the board, we have challenges in that way. But any other thoughts or legislative things you're working on or thinking about for the future?
That is why I'm working on supply. As we know, supply and demand is what creates a equal playing field on the housing market, especially when it comes to rental rates, as well as the cost and affordability of a home. And we understand the supply demand chain. So, working on more supply, we have a lot of new energy codes that have gone into place that have increased the cost of housing. So in the future, we're going to need to look at State Building Code Council, and there is there should be some correlation with how much it costs, what the benefit is of supplying, the heat pumps, the hot water tanks, the things that can't be gas anymore. So we really need to be looking at State Building Code Council and what type of regulations are putting on houses and how cost beneficial that is and how much is driving the cost of homes up. This year, I'm also working on, well, you and Sean, Karl went with me and the other state reps and senators to TRIDEC. And we got to go meet with a classroom full of kids getting their nursing degree. One of them was my daughter. It was very fun that we got to go do that. And so I am working this session on trying to figure out one of the things, having 2 kids in VOTEC school. One of the things that I learned was my kids can't find jobs, and they specifically can't find jobs in the areas that they're learning. Washington State has become increasingly hard for 16 and 17-year-olds to find work or employment, not just in nursing or like my son in automotive, but even stores at the mall will now say that they won't hire kids until they're 18. And having 2 16 and 17-year-olds and paying for gas and the price of gas right now, I would prefer they pay for their own. So we're working on a bill that is kind of diving into why, especially these kids that are in CTE courses, are not being employed at 16 and 17. For instance, in the nursing program, these kids will come out with a CNA, a certified nursing assistant degree, but they can't get a job usually till they're 18. And so they come out 16 or 17, they have their license, they then go on to do something else, and we lose them in that really important field of workforce. So working on that this session through the Labor Committee, and then another, appropriations this year. We have the governor is wanting to increase the budget this year. We have climate commitment dollars, the Climate Commitment Act, and how much money that has brought in. I do have a bill this year that is called the CAR bill. It's actually being filed, I think, today with Representative Dye and myself, that gives a one-time rebate back to the citizens of the state of Washington in July of this year, if you have a registered vehicle in the state. And it's about $180 per person that would go back to the people, and it's just the excess revenue from the Climate Commitment Act. So hoping to be able to help out in some families' pocketbooks this year with that. It's never enough, but it is what the excess would be divided by the number of actual vehicle owners in Washington State. So working on that as well.
Cool. That's great. I don't think anybody would ever disagree with having a rebate back from the state government. That's great. We got a couple questions, but we've talked about them and kind of that interaction in between some of the climate acts, future stuff that's coming up, and local industry, local communities that you guys all do such a great job representing. And just take a couple minutes and talk about the civility caucus that Sean led a discussion with Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck here. And I just want to bring it up from a local perspective. Like, it was so great to be able to talk about this. And I just want to give all of you guys kudos, because I think that you do such a good job in not only obviously being civil, but then also working across the party aisle, if you will, with colleagues from your peers from other parts of the state, to work together to really bring back meaningful legislation that supports not only our region, but the whole rest of the state. Sometimes we see so much polarization nationally. And I just wanted to, number one, acknowledge all of you guys and the hard work that you do, because people don't really realize, not only running for election or re-election, but then also serving as you do. And then not only doing that, but then also getting past the rhetoric and the campaign stuff, and then saying, hey, we might be from a different party, but let's work on something together, and coming up with really meaningful legislation that means a lot. So number one, I both wanted to thank all of you for your service and for your approach to it in, really using that civility and that just being good people and forming, I think, authentic relationships that really pay dividends for us with the legislation that you're able to do. And I guess that's not really a question, it's more of a comment, but I don't know, Sean, you led the civility caucus discussion that was here at CBC earlier this week. You want to add anything to that, and then just open it up for comments from the legislators?
Well, maybe I'll double up on your thanks here, because I also want to point to past successes of the Legislative Council in previous sessions in which our representatives so strongly supported community-driven priorities. So I think back to the Ag Innovation Center and the feasibility study there for that support that's really, again, community driven. That came out of the MyTry 2030 effort. And so great support there. The strong support for the Benton Franklin Recovery Coalition support last session, which is a game changer for those folks. And then again, for INEF at WSU, the Institute for Northwest Energy Futures, these are such important priorities for our community. And the Legislative Council came together to advocate for those, and our legislators then took that and championed them and got those across the finish line. So I think that double thank you of both your ability to be civil and work across the aisle when it's important to do so to get those things done is so critical for those important projects on the ground here in our community. So I'll just double up on the thanks and not necessarily ask another question.
Yeah, like I said, there wasn't a question, but does anybody else want to jump in on this one? I do think it's important because you guys work really hard. People don't understand how many times you drive and fly back and forth across the state for meetings and committee hearings. And like, it's not just during the session, it's the whole year. And, it's not easy. And then, you have to take the hard questions from people that have a question about legislation or why'd you do this or why'd you do that? So it's by no means an easy job. And I think anybody that wants to challenge you guys on like, hey, you're not doing a good job, like step up and run, right? Get involved in the process, right? I think that's what our country's built on. So any other comments on that? Again, sorry I didn't word it as a question, but I think it's really important. And I just want to make sure that, especially at Christmas when we're all with our families, you guys really do a great job representing us. So thank you. Nothing? Okay. Sorry.
Well, I guess I'll jump in. I just want to thank Rep Barnard for kind of pushing that through with when we saw at the congressional level, a lot of things that are bridging, the gap between this animosity and when you see our nation kind of splitting. I think it's a time to when we got to build those bridges and bring people back together. And whether it's breaking bread, she mentioned the other night about reaching across the aisle. And we've had this discussion, Karl, and kind of sharing with the rest. It's just when you go through something like this, you try to focus on getting things done. And it really is the real reasons why you run. You want to run to help your community. You want to run to help your neighbors. It's not a cliche or a slogan or a, campaign thing. This is the reason we are here. And I believe people want that trust back in government. They want that authenticity that you are a neighbor, you grew up here, that has that impact. You see this on the screen right now. We have a wealth and a representation, I think, better than most in the state. And I'm just proud to be a part of the team, proud to be helping out and humbled to be a part of this team. And it just means a lot having them on the Capitol, working through the aisles, getting back together after COVID, try to build those bridges. And I think it means a lot to a lot of members that are listening in as well. So thank you guys for bringing that up.
Senator Torres, I believe you're
definitely.
working on across party lines on that civic health component due to the advocacy of Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck, right? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Sean, for bringing that up. Yes, working with Senator Lovick on that. But again, I appreciate Representative Barnard really bringing this to light back a couple years back. I can't remember what year it was, but you started that originally back then here in Tri-City. So very appreciative of that, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's people over politics. It shouldn't be just politics. It's always putting the people first. So civility is very much needed, and I'm grateful to be working with Senator Lovick on this bill.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, so let's go into a rapid fire closing remarks session. Again, I just want to thank you all for your service to our region, to our districts, to our state. And thanks for taking some time this morning to join us on Coffee with Karl. Representative Connors, you want to kick us off on some closing remarks?
Sure. I would just say, thanks for having us today. I want everyone to have a Merry Christmas, and thanks for everyone who is listening along. Really important to us that we hear from you throughout session. We recently did a legislative training session for the Tri-Cities, and that I think is available online. The city of Richland did record that on how to get involved in the process, how to comment on a bill, how to testify. So we would love to hear from more people from Eastern Washington. We've been lacking that over in Olympia. So have a Merry Christmas, and thanks for having us today.
Thanks, Representative Connors. Representative Barnard, you want to go next?
Sure. I also just kind of heart filled with gratitude this morning for TRIDEC. Just worked so hard in the legislature trying to put together the Legislative Nuclear Energy Caucus. And you guys, I just have to give a shout out to Tracy Jow, Tiffany Burke, David Replog for putting together and hosting the first ever Tri-City Nuclear Energy Caucus for our legislators. It was a huge success, and I can't thank you enough for supporting this initiative and this vision to try to have legislators from the other side of the aisle and the other side of the state come over and see and experience and meet the people of the Tri-Cities. It was absolutely an incredible event, and all the credit goes to you and your staff. And I just couldn't be more grateful for you for supporting the Legislative Nuclear Energy Caucus. So thank you so much. And I hope you all have a Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Representative Barnard. We appreciate that. We have a great team here at TRIDEC, but we have a great team as our community, right? And so when we have opportunities to show off our community, we're all in for sure. Senator Torres, thank you for your time this morning. Do you have some closing remarks for us?
Well, just to say thank you to you as well, Karl, and your team, and Tracy and Sean. Thank you so much for including us in your morning coffee chat. But also, to reiterate, Tracy listed how to get a hold of us on the chat. So feel free to message us. We definitely want to hear from our constituents, want to hear what's going on, questions, concerns. We are more than happy to hear from everyone. So please reach out to us, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thanks, Senator. Senator Boehnke of the Mighty Eight.
Thanks, Karl. Just an honor to be part of the team, and Merry Christmas to everybody, and hopefully you have a safe and happy, healthy New Year. It is a team effort, like you mentioned. We have the greatest community. We call it the Mighty Eight, and we'll help out the 15th getting a slogan going as part of that. Strength is in numbers, and we want to secure a safer Washington that has been impacted a lot from COVID, a lot of these things that have broken people apart. We're building a lot of bridges. We mentioned building strength back in our communities. We want to continue that effort from a lot of the different team efforts that we've got wins from the last session, and continue this in a bipartisan support. But you're going to see us step up in leadership roles. We're inspired by what we've heard, not only from TRIDEC superintendents, from our schools, from the community members at our the Union Gospel Mission, all the way through the cities, the counties, the impacts to our economies, and really our neighbors and people who have reached out to us. So continue the communication. Let us know what you think, you feel, good, bad, or ugly. We see it in our inbox. We want to hear from you. We're an open door. We want to support the congressional level as well. Got to say, tearing down of the dams is a bad thing. We want to push back on that anywhere we can in the state, and really showcase how our energy future is going to be the backbone of our community, and that's going to help us out with a lot of the different efforts you're going to see in the future. So Merry Christmas again. Happy New Year. Thanks again, Tracy and the team, for putting this on. But thank you, Karl, for the coffee. And hopefully we can do this in person.
Looking forward to it, Senator. Thank you. Sean, you want to have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I appreciate our legislators so much. And I would just encourage, for anyone tuning in, encourage you to join us on January 25th for our Tri-Cities Legislative Day in Olympia, where we'll be fighting for our priorities over with the legislators on the West Side. So encourage you to reach out and join us.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for your time this morning. This really means a lot to us. Thank you for your service. Thanks for everybody joining us on Zoom and on social media. Everyone have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you next time on Coffee with Karl. Thank you.